Hello, everyone. Good afternoon, and welcome to today's Renfrew Center Recovery webinar, Grinding Our Gears, How Grind Culture Impacts Eating Disorder Recovery. My name is Hannah Podhorzer, a member of our Alumni Services team, and I will be your moderator for today's online presentation. Before I introduce you all to today's presenter, Erin Byerly, I wanted to go over a few announcements to give others some extra time to join in. As we head into the fall, we've got some exciting webinars planned. Next month, we'll be hearing from Ashley Moser, Clinical Education Specialist at the Renfrew Center. She'll be presenting, Do I Have to Love Myself First? Further exploring romantic relationships in the context of eating disorder recovery on Wednesday, October 25th. This is the second installment of an earlier webinar Ashley presented in the spring. After that, we'll hear from Dr. Jacqueline Wise, also a clinical education specialist at the Renfrew Center, who will be talking with us about the gift of self-care, recovery in the holiday season on Wednesday, November 15th. To close out the year, we'll hear from Susan Kleinman, dance movement therapist at the Renfrew Center of Florida, as she presents Living in Your Body, Creating a Sense of Inner Well-Being on Wednesday, December 6th. Additionally, this season, we are also excited to announce Renfrew's fall workshop, Trusting the Change, Strengthening Trust as a Foundation of Recovery. We will be hosting both in-person and virtual workshops on Tuesday, October 10th and Wednesday, October 11th that are open to all alumni. We're also still hosting our residential alumni support group monthly with our next meeting scheduled for Tuesday, October 17th. We're also continuing to host weekly BIPOC and SAGE outpatient groups if you're looking for more specific support related to your life and recovery. You can reach out to our phone number if you're interested in learning more about these groups and registered for any of those aforementioned events that interest you at renfrewcenter.com/events. And as always, if you feel like you need more support at this time or in the future, please feel free to call us at 1-800-RENFREW. Many of our sites continue to offer in-person services, and virtual services are available through Renfrew at Home. Now, to get on with the reason that you are all here, which is the webinar. Following the webinar, we would love your feedback. You will receive an email with an evaluation form to be completed online, and that evaluation form will help us develop new and innovative programs that will assist you in your recovery. A question and answer session will follow the presentation as well. Questions can be submitted at any time during the webinar by typing them into the chat. Please just be sure to note that you're sending the chat to all panelists and not everyone, so your questions just go to us. I would now like to introduce you to today's presenter, who perhaps needs no introduction. My colleague, Erin Byerly, licensed clinical professional counselor, started working as the team leader at the Renfrew Center of Baltimore in September of 2016. I just learned that this is her 7-year anniversary this week at Renfrew, so that's very exciting. And then she joined the Alumni Services team in 2019 as the Alumni Services Coordinator. Prior to joining Renfrew, Erin had worked in private practice as well as inpatient, partial, and intensive outpatient levels of care. Erin has worked in the field of eating disorder treatment since receiving her master's degree in 2012. She enjoys working with people to make positive and long-lasting changes in life through therapy and building their emotional tolerance. So without further ado, Erin, I'm going to pass the proverbial Zoom microphone over to you.
Thank you, Hannah. And thank you everyone for joining us today for Grinding Our Gears, How Grind Culture Impacts Eating Disorder Recovery. And it probably comes as no surprise that we're going to be talking about hustle or grind culture and how this intersects and impacts our eating disorders development, treatment, and recovery, and how this rise in popularity for hustle and grind culture in our overall larger culture has impacted us both in our eating disorder and outside of our eating disorder. So I'm glad y'all are here with me today to talk about it. All right, so what is hustle or grind culture? Let's start with the basics. So it's helpful to define the concept. Hustle and grind culture is this idea that we must always be working in order to reach our goals. It's perpetuated by stories of hardworking individuals who never take time off or time away from work. And the idea behind it is really that everyone can achieve immense success if they just work hard enough. It's not really hard to see why this isn't really accurate. We'll get into more of that. But the belief doesn't take into account privileges and disadvantages, both earned and unearned, that we all kind of come into the world with. They also don't take into account life circumstances, discrimination that we might be experiencing, and that not everyone wants the intense success that hustle culture and grind culture has us striving towards. It also doesn't give us a stopping point. There isn't a point in this mentality where we say, okay, I've had enough. So rise and grind continues throughout everything. Instead, it's just the next achievement, next achievement, next achievement. So we've seen, hustle culture and why it exists. Oh, hold on, wrong slide. Nope. There we go. So why does hustle culture exist? So hustle culture started out in the kind of late 90s, well, probably 90s and early 2000s, not 200s, sorry, typo on the slide there. What we know about hustle and grind culture is that it really started with these ideas around the internet boom. With the increase in technology, the world experienced more and more companies getting into tech. And we started seeing these companies and these individuals leading the companies having a really, really intense success in a very short period of time. And this led to venture capitalist firms really getting into tech startups in the 1990s and expecting those long hours and the continuous work from the people that were working in these companies. And in order to hit the goals that these VCs, these investors had for you, you had to be working really, really hard on that. One of these, tech startups was that introduction of social media. So you throw a bit of social media into this already kind of culture of having different, having it very publicized that people need to be working really hard in order to succeed in this one area. And that increases access just to the idea, and then also access to what comparisons we can be making. So all of a sudden, we're not just seeing successes from people around us, but we're seeing the highlight reel of all these different people that we've ever kind of interacted with in our life, or maybe we haven't even interacted with. We saw this humble brag about working late, putting in extra hours. We started comparing to our own life or our own successes or lack thereof, and feeling like, okay, maybe I need to be working harder, maybe I need to be doing more. And if we didn't, that's when the emotions start to come up. And we know that one of the things when we have these uncomfortable emotions that we want to do is we want to be able to run away from them. It feels a lot easier than tolerating the emotions. By focusing on the end goal or the product, and believing that that's all that matters, we're able to avoid some of the emotions that can come up in the process along the way. We just keep pushing forward. We just keep pushing forward. We don't necessarily notice or give ourselves the time to notice the uncomfortable emotions. We've just got to keep working. And when our culture as a whole starts to focus on this kind of product over process idea, it reinforces that avoidance, that just push through, you'll get some praise, you'll get good things if you just push through. But that isn't really sustainable. And that emotional avoidance leads to, well, some problems that we're going to talk about. All right, so how does hustle culture impact our larger culture? I feel like we've missed. I'm going to actually stop sharing for a second, guys, because I feel like we've missed some slides. Let's see. Nope. All right, they're just out of order. Never mind. We're rolling with it. We're going with the process, y'all. We're not focusing on the product. Okay. So how does hustle culture impact our overall culture? So there's a few different ways that this happens. So it led to some amazing advancements. We can't kind of just throw the baby out with the bathwater and say hustle culture isn't working anymore, it's not helpful. It really did lead to some amazing advancements and successes in different areas, but it also has this detrimental side to us. With the focus shifting to productivity and what can be accomplished by someone, we've moved away from the inherent worth of each person. It's become very common that it's through our productivity that we can show and validate our worth. And that if we're not doing something productive, we're feeling like we don't have work. Rest, relaxation, working just 40 hours a week has this connotation to it for some of us that we're not as worthy as those that aren't resting, that aren't relaxing, that are working those 60, 80 hours a week. It diminishes also the work people are doing outside of specific jobs or projects. So it's neglecting the needs of each person for rest, as well as kind of diminishing what it takes to kind of really live a full life. We've also seen an increase in rates of anxiety and depression. And while this isn't solely contributed by like hustle culture, we know that not taking enough breaks and not getting enough rest can lead to increased anxiety and depression symptoms, as well as increased stress leads to that. We also know that if someone isn't feeling like they're meeting the expectations or that people are posting about or that they're talking about, this can bring up some really uncomfortable emotions like guilt and anxiety. And these are going to kind of compound just the anxiety and depression we're feeling from the feelings of stress and how that's impacting us. And then outside of mental health, we're also seeing physical health impacts from constant working and stress. So one of the things we know, lack of rest, lack of stress can lead to digestive issues, headaches, high blood pressure, sleep problems, heart attack, stroke, all these different things. So we know that this constant on the move, on the go is not good for us emotionally, mentally, or physically. So how are we seeing hustle culture? So hustle culture on social media. These are probably some of the images you guys have seen when you're scrolling through social media. The Elon Musk Twitter tweet, yes, is one of the ones that really kind of brought this to the forefront. People really started looking at like, oh my gosh, like, is that really true? How do I feel about that? But these ideas just really give a lot of emotion, you know, when I see them. So I want you all just to take a moment and notice what you feel as you are looking at these. So there are way easier places to work, but nobody ever changed the world on a 40 hours a week. Step it up a notch. You're not going as hard as you think you are. I've got a dream that's worth more than my sleep. No matter how you feel, get up, dress up, show up, and never give up. And just kind of notice what comes up as you read these, as you see them. We're going to do a little bit more of how does it feel. So we've got a video here. So this was a series kind of thing that Forbes had on YouTube. But I want you just to notice where your thoughts go while you're watching this. Notice if there's comparisons that come up, thoughts about your own future. Try to notice any emotions that come up. And maybe notice just what the experience is like. Watch this real quick.
I'm Kareem Abulnaga, the founder of Practice Makes Perfect. I wake up every day at 4:30. I work out, shower, meditate, and get dressed. Sometimes my meditation is just a quick minute to remind me to keep working hard and always be grateful. I don't usually wear a suit to work, but this is the time of year when most charities have their annual benefit dinners. I plug in my headphones and start listening to my audiobooks. I listen at 3 times the normal speed and get through a little more than a book per week. Off to work. I mostly commute by train, so I use an app to minimize my wait time on the platform to ensure I don't miss a train by a few seconds. I'm in the office by 7 a.m. I try to get 4 to 5 miles of walking done in the morning before I head back to my desk, change out my sneakers, and lace up my shoes to start the day. First meeting's at 9:45 to organize an end of summer celebration for our team and school partners. I then have an impromptu call with our contract consultant to update him on the details of the event. I'm working on self-publishing 3 books in the spring. I had given myself an hour to write. Now I'm left with just 15 minutes. Every minute counts. Today we have our monthly KPI meeting. I try to start all of my internal group meetings with 3 deep breaths. It helps me get centered and bring my attention to the meeting. Then I'm off to grab a quick bite. My next meeting's in Midtown, so I get on the train and listen to music. I'm meeting with an art institution to see if there's a potential partnership. Back to the office. I have informal check-ins with my staff to discuss challenges and opportunities, both personal and professional. I'm done by 5:45 and headed to the gala. I keep my girlfriend posted on my ETA. Tonight we're supporting an education charity for children of lesser means in South Africa. I'm out by 9 and in bed by 10:30. I'm waking up early to do it all again tomorrow, but I don't mind. I've dedicated my life to leveling the educational playing field for children growing up just like I did.
So what do people notice as you're watching that? I love the guy's mission, and like, oh my God, I feel my stress rising. I feel my anxiety going up. And that's something, what is going on, that for me, that's my reaction. So this idea of hustle or grind culture, we've got to keep going, do all of these things, and is it really sustainable? That's kind of what we're asking. Trying to go to the next slide. Computer does not want to be hustled. All right, so how is hustle culture and eating disorders similar? So we know that hustle culture impacts our overall kind of culture, but specifically, how is it going to impact that relationship with our body and ourself, and our eating disorder? They both thrive off of similar mindsets. The idea that the end goal is all that matters, and it doesn't really matter how we get there. If we want to, feel empty, we focus on getting there as quickly as possible, not on understanding what contributes to that desire and what's fueling it. If we want to distract and avoid, we go to the quickest thing that we know will do that for us, not thinking the long-term consequences. If we want to feel comforted, again, it is just about reaching that goal. Hustle culture reinforces this idea that it is the end product that is the most important and not the process. We've just got to hit that goal. They're also both perpetuating this idea that we are the ones in control. We're in control of our body, we're in control of our destiny, we're in control of our achievements, when in reality, we know that there are a multitude of factors that impact, the trajectory of our life, how our body's functioning, what we're thinking, what we're experiencing, how we're interpreting those things. And by continuing to try and assert control over these uncontrollable factors, we end up feeling like driven to have that control, but it's really the eating disorder or that mindset, that hustle or grind culture mindset, that is the thing that's in control. It is controlling us. We end up feeling driven to continue the behaviors, even when we recognize they may no longer be serving us. I recognize that this, like, from meeting to meeting to meeting to meeting, isn't really helping me anymore. And I still feel like I can't stop because the discomfort, if I try to, feels so strong and I don't know what to do with it. So they both also kind of, to that point, have this cyclical nature to them. So this idea that there is no end, it just keeps going. There's always something else to be working towards. There's always another goal. There's always something else. It's reinforcing that idea that it's not enough. You know, those statements of like, well, I'll be happy when such a, being able to kind of recognize how that keeps us stuck in a cycle of looking for short-term gains, but having these long-term losses. They end up backfiring. And instead of making us feel maybe more confident, more secure, we're feeling less secure, less confident, maybe more like less worthy of things. But it's hard to get out of because that short-term kind of, okay, I feel good, I achieved this goal, is what kind of stays with us. It's what conditions us. So it's really, we've got to move to looking at, well, what's the long-term impact of these things? Okay, so how does hustle culture really support an eating disorder? So more specifically than just the similarities, you know, what is it doing to actually support an eating disorder? So we know that eating disorders can be fueled in part through comparisons. And we make those comparisons whether they're in our lives, on social media, and hustle culture supports this idea of looking at, well, what are others doing? And am I working as hard, or do I need to be working harder than this other person? These comparisons highlight what we're already feeling, maybe insecure, or ways we're feeling unworthy. And anyone that's gone through treatment knows that the eating disorder can be really good at tricking us into believing that leaning into the disorder more is what's going to make those insecurities, those feelings of being unworthy, go away. Hustle culture also looks at breaks as being a waste of time, which means meal breaks are off the table. If we're not taking breaks, you know, we're not taking that break to go and, you know, plate a full meal for ourselves or have all of our exchanges or whatever it is. And if we're not skipping meals fully, we're probably not having them mindfully. We're not taking that break from work. We're not looking to, you know, have space to just be present with our body. We're maybe eating at our desk. We're grabbing something on the go and just having it as we're rushing off to work or somewhere else or doing something like that. So the piece of not being able to take breaks, not being able to rest, really supports a lot of the specific behaviors that we might see from the eating disorder. It's also supporting this idea of disconnection from ourselves and from our surroundings. So if the main focus is work and success, this means we're not stopping when we're tired. It means we've got to disconnect from the cues our body and our mind is giving us that we need a break. We know that the disconnection from mind and body is a key feature of the eating disorder, and it really supports it. When we have it reinforced that, like, no, disconnecting from your body, not stopping when you're tired is actually a way to like continue to move forward and push forward, that ends up reinforcing those eating disorder beliefs as well. We know from treatment that emotions are an important signal to us that something is happening it's our body's way of telling us something is happening. And when we are disconnected from our body, it's going to be harder to notice those emotions. When we neglect to notice those emotions, they have a tendency to build up and boil over at some point when it might not totally be in line with what's actually going on. But by having this reinforcement that work is an appropriate distraction from uncomfortable emotions, it really supports that continued avoidance. So we also know that, you know, hustle culture can really support the eating disorder by reinforcing our insecurities about our own self-worth. In addition to the comparisons we've mentioned, hustle culture also focuses on this idea that if we're not working towards something, then we aren't doing enough, which in turn, like when you break that down, what it really means is like, if I'm not doing something, I'm not enough. So if you think back on the video we just watched and how much that person was cramming into their day, like, and the insecurities that might have come up for you while watching it, the idea that anything that isn't productive is seen as a waste, waiting for the train, having a few extra minutes for that, not listening to a book on 3 times speed, which if anyone's ever done it, I can't go over like 1.25 speed, 1.5 speed is pushing it for me. So 3 times feels like a lot. And it really can lead to kind of evaluating what is my worth with a focus on what am I doing or what am I not doing? And you combine that with the eating disorder goals, and many things get to start being crossed off the list as not productive. They're a waste of time and they're not helping me. So lastly, hustle culture also encourages us to have an extreme focus on our goals, but it neglects to remind us of why. Why are we working towards these goals? What is it that we're hoping to achieve? What is it that we're looking for, really? So our eating disorder does the same thing. If we stop looking at the why of like, what is it that I'm really wanting? And we just look at, well, if I get this goal, then I'll be happy, then I'll be fine, then I'll be good, whatever it might be. So our eating disorders and that hustle culture idea end up reinforcing each other. But what we end up seeing is that if I'm focused on financial success, so I can support my family, there's the why, I may end up neglecting the other ways my family needs support because I'm working constantly. Or if I'm wanting to feel more confident and I'm using my eating disorder as a way to try to get that, I'm likely going to miss the chance to look at, well, what's actually contributing to why I don't feel confident. What is it that's actually fueling that? Because one of the things we know is when you get there, it doesn't always mean you're feeling better. So what are some signs that we are stuck in grind culture? So we know that this impacts us. We know that it supports the eating disorder. And we know that it's not helping us in the long run. But how do we know when we're stuck grinding our gears, as our title suggests? Well, we need to start by increasing our awareness around a lot of things, but especially what's our work ethic and what's the amount of time we're actually spending on work and other productive tasks. So I want you to start just right now, trying to think back to when you let yourself stop working on something. Do you let yourself stop a project when you are feeling tired or burned out on it? You take a break? Do you get up, walk away from the computer? Or are you powering through until the end of the task and you feel like it's complete? Not stopping when we're tired is this clear sign that we might be getting stuck in that hustle culture grind mindset. And this can be hard to do. I'll tell you guys, when I was working on this project, I had moments where I'd have the thought, oh my gosh, just push through, just get through this slide or do this. And I had to stop myself and be like, you're literally doing a presentation on this. Like, give yourself a break, come back in 10, 15 minutes. But one of the other things we can notice is what emotions come up when we are having those breaks, whether they're by our own choice or, we are waiting in the doctor's office and we don't have any self-service. And so literally all we can do is sit there. Whatever it might be, like what emotions come up when we do have those breaks or we're doing something that doesn't feel productive. When we have those moments, think back and think about how you feel. Do you feel relaxed and at peace? And are you kind of able to be like, whew? Or do you notice feelings of guilt, worthlessness, anger at yourself? Why aren't you working harder? Why aren't you doing more? Ask yourself if it's hard to sit still during a break, or do you have kind of consistent urges to get up, do something, find something to do? These could be signs that we've kind of internalized this idea that we need to be working, we need to be doing, and that it's getting hard to let ourselves rest. I want you to ask yourself also, when was the last time you let yourself have a day off? And not like a day off of like, oh, I'm going to lose that PTO if I don't use it. So like I'll use it and I'll cram in like my car's oil change, a haircut, a doctor's appointment, a this, or like I'm going to clean out the garage, or I'm going to do this house project, but like an actual day off to rest, a time when you don't have to do something productive. If you've got like a ton of paid time off accumulated that you're not using, that could be a sign that we're in that kind of mindset. Or if we feel like we can only use it if we've got a good reason, again, it might be that it's hard for us to take breaks. I also want you to think about, how does it feel going through your day? Does it feel like there's never enough time? Do you feel like you're always trying to fit more in? That like you just need 3 more hours in the day to do everything you need to do, or having that constant to-do list that, you know, we're crossing one thing off and adding 2 more on. That not having things to do feels like we're not that important. These are signs that we're maybe getting a little stuck. So how do we let go of the hustle and the grind? Rest. Who would have guessed? Allowing ourselves and getting comfortable with this idea of rest is really kind of our best antidote to this hustle and grind mindset. Not nearly as easy as it sounds. I said I struggled with it even during this, working on this presentation. And it doesn't mean like I just need to start taking breaks and everything will work itself out. It's definitely more complicated than that. Like we've said, there's a lot of different factors. So letting go of it means we're not going to be able to avoid those uncomfortable emotions. So they're going to start coming to the surface, and we may not know, like, what do I do with them? This can lead to a lot of resistance to incorporating rest into our lives and letting go of these mindsets, even when you can maybe sit here and logically say, like, I recognize the importance of rest. I know it's important. I encourage it in other people. But it's really, it can be hard sometimes. So we've got a fun little clip here around the importance of rest. So we will watch this, and hopefully it's going to go start at the time I wanted it to.
Squatteth the toad of truth.
Toad of truth? Is that a physics thing?
No, that's a crazy thing.
Okay, Sheldon, what happens to our neuroreceptors when we don't get enough REM sleep?
They lose their sensitivity to serotonin and norepinephrine.
Which leads to...
Impaired cognitive function.
Right. So march in there, brush your teeth, and go to bed.
But I don't want to go to bed.
I'm gonna count to 3. 1.
Oh, all right.
All right, so it's meant to be a funny clip. But what we see is that even when we know rest is important from a biological perspective, it doesn't mean we always want to do it. So when you add in uncomfortable emotions like guilt, worthlessness, insecurity to the experience of rest, it can feel so much harder to take those breaks, let alone just sometimes we don't want to. So why is rest important in general? So we believe that rest is an integral part of productivity. And what makes it so important? Sleep, especially as a form of rest, can have major impacts on neurotransmitters, brain function, all of that stuff that's going on up there that just is very complex and cool. But in addition to the physical benefits that sleep provides, we also know that like rest overall can actually help us increase our productivity. Rest and taking breaks has actually been shown to increase productivity at a task, and allowing the brain to take a break from focusing on like one solitary thing allows us to be more productive when we return to that task. So taking those breaks, giving our brain a chance to rest and not be so focused on it, can actually increase the productivity. which additionally can end up increasing the quality of the work. I know I can think of times when I was in school, when I pushed through like tiredness to finish a paper, went back to revise it the next day and wondered like what the heck I was thinking when I wrote that last part that I pushed through. And just really being like, that is really not my best work. And so giving ourselves the breaks allows the quality of our work to improve, as opposed to just finishing it kind of half-heartedly or when we're not really functioning as well. And that can be emotionally, that can also be just mentally. Our brain isn't functioning as well as we saw in the clip. So the breaks also allow us to have increased creativity in a task. So when we stop focusing on reaching a product at the end and focus instead on the process, we can work to think of a variety of ways to achieve the end goal, as opposed to just having that laser focus and feeling like this is where I'm going, this is what I need to do. I just have to push through those things. Slowing down a little bit, giving ourselves a chance to rest can help us kind of think more creatively about, okay, is there another way around this stuck point or this place where I'm finding myself getting kind of caught up or whatever it might be. We also know that breaks lead to more long-term success and less chances of burnout. That's like a big piece. When we give ourselves breaks and like smaller goals that we're working towards, it allows our motivation to feel more consistent. It allows us to keep working, have the energy, things like that. And it also allows us a chance to recharge. You know, we can't keep going and going and going. We will burn out eventually. And so having that chance to really recharge is an important way of preventing burnout. All right, so what does it mean to rest? We've talked about rest, but what is it? What am I actually talking about when I say the word rest? The clip we watched talked about sleep, but it doesn't always have to mean sleep. I'm not telling everyone like, okay, we've got to put in 15-minute nap times every hour. While sleep is definitely an important part of rest, it is only one piece. Resting can also, though, just mean that we're taking a break from what we are doing. So that one thing we've been doing, we're taking a break, we're shifting our focus, we're doing something different. It could look like just getting up and changing our environment. So leaving our desk and walking to a coworker's office and sitting down on a chair in their office that isn't our normal office chair, having that connection with them. It could be going outside and just standing in the sun for a minute or listening to the wind. Doing something that allows us to not kind of have that almost like highway blindness of just kind of one thing, it's all I'm seeing, can give our brain that rest. It helps us notice, okay, what is going on around me? What is happening here? The idea behind rest is not that we need to stop altogether. It can be just giving ourselves a chance to do something different, maybe something that isn't going to take as much mental energy, maybe just some mindfulness to kind of be with the moment and reduce the disconnection from our body and our mind. It can also be just saying like, I'm going to go and do a quick word puzzle or something because it's different than the math that I've been working on or things like that. But the idea is just that we're not focusing on one solitary thing again and again and again. All right, so how do I rest? So we've talked about rest, but how the heck do I do this? It's a great question. And it's personal to each person. This is really about figuring out what rest is to you and what it means and what are the ways that leave you feeling refreshed. I think that's the big thing. Like, have I rested? Do I come back to a task? And all right, maybe I'm not jumping for joy. Like, I'm so ready to get back into this. I might still be like, God, I hate this project. But am I feeling just a little bit more energized? So generally, though, one of the things we know that can help with rest is to slow down. Giving ourselves a chance to check in with ourselves while we are working, doing a 3-point check, noticing what we're feeling at that moment, noticing physical sensations, noticing behaviors, urges, can help us recognize, first off, when we need rest. When we notice, like, wow, I've been rereading the same paragraph 3 or 4 times now, that can help us know that, okay, maybe I need to put the bookmark in the book and get up and go outside for 5 minutes or something. If we check in with ourselves and we notice I keep shifting in my seat, like maybe it's a sign that, like, oh yeah, I've been sitting at my desk for a while. Let me get up, let me run to the restroom. Maybe I've just got to use the restroom and I haven't been paying attention to that. If we notice that our thoughts are a complete dread around continuing a particular task, maybe it's time to give ourselves a break from that. Maybe it's time to say, okay, you know what? I'm going to put this to the side for 30 minutes. I'm going to work on answering emails or something like that. Noticing that if your body's letting you know, it needs some energy. Noticing those hunger cues that come up. Incorporating these mindfulness breaks is a great way to start slowing down and just noticing what is happening in our experience. As I said, also getting outside and taking that time outside can be a great and easy way to incorporate rest. If we're working in an office setting, sitting in a classroom all day, we might have very little time outdoors. And one of the things we know is that nature has a natural rhythm to it that can be very helpful with grounding and also with like calming down our brains at times of kind of extreme stress. So taking even a few minutes to be outside, listening to the wind or the birds, just feeling the sun on your face can be this great chance to give both your mind and your body a chance to rest. It also gives us that change in our environment, which can help with energy levels and just kind of remembering there's a world outside of the task that we're working on. Somewhat larger way to give ourselves rest is to set kind of firm boundaries on when we're allowing ourselves to work and making sure we're disconnecting from work outside of those hours. This can look a couple of different ways, and one might be setting device-free areas in your homes. So designating places that devices can't go. Like I know a lot of people do this with kids of like, there are no devices in the bedroom or at the kitchen table or in the dining room. Things like that, maybe even expanding it. It's not just the kids, it's everybody. Can also be setting work hours for ourselves and actually putting up an automatic reply on our emails outside of those hours. When 6 o'clock hits or whenever the end of your work day is, having that automatic reply of like, I have completed, like, thank you so much for your email. We'll get to it first thing tomorrow. I am not checking email outside of work hours though. Letting people know. These steps are kind of bigger, so they might require some stronger boundaries and will more than likely bring up some emotions if we're struggling with this. But the idea is to talk with our supports and talk with our team about taking these steps and letting the people that it's going to impact know as well, talking to our bosses and coworkers and saying like, hey, I'm working on making sure I'm resting. I think it would be good for all of us to do this. This is what I'm going to do. So having those supports set similar boundaries can be a really helpful way to, one, feel supported, but also stay accountable. So those can be really cool ways to do it with other people. And another way to create more rest in your life is to let yourself think a bit more creatively. So what I'm talking about is really taking time to reflect on what it is you're looking for from your achievements and work. Talking with your therapist about what it is that is driving this desire to be productive and what it is you're hoping to find through the different achievements and accomplishments. Understanding the underlying goals and discussing what are the other ways you could work towards that is a really helpful way to creatively kind of come up with different options other than just work. I said earlier, if we're looking for financial success or financial stability, is it maybe changing things in our personal life? Or if we're looking for improvement in our health, is there a way to do that without changing our body? When we allow ourselves that flexibility to think creatively, to think about different ways of reaching our goals, we can start to kind of let go of that idea that I just have to keep pushing forward. So rest and eating disorder recovery. You may be wondering, all right, Erin, you're talking a lot about rest and all these different things, but what the heck does this have to do with my eating disorder? So we know that these two, the hustle and grind culture and eating disorders, really support each other. And if rest helps reduce hustle and grind culture mentality, it makes sense. It would also reduce eating disorder mindset. And we know that that's true because rest is an integral part of eating disorder recovery. And there is not a way to really work on our overall recovery without incorporating rest into the process. You think about time you spend with a therapist, time you spend at meals, like it might not always feel restful. And those are times away from work. They're doing something different that we may not see and our culture may not see as productive. So it's really this integral part to it. If we're not resting, we're likely avoiding. That's the other thing. We're avoiding, we're continuing to reinforce the beliefs about uncomfortable emotions that support our returning to the eating disorder behaviors again and again and again. So it's hard to really be free of the control those eating disorder thoughts have on us until we're really allowing ourselves to feel the emotions, any of the emotions that come up for us, even the uncomfortable ones. And if we're not allowing rest, then we're not allowing ourselves to feel all of the emotions because there's going to be emotion along with rest. So one of the reasons the Renfrew Center's UT model is built on this foundation of mindfulness. Mindfulness is the skill of slowing down, noticing what we notice. We ask all of our group members to do this at the start of every morning and in day treatment, and it helps really build comfort with the skill and with the emotions we experience with resting. It requires, we'll ask group members to spend at least 3 minutes, the length of the practice, not doing something except noticing. And this practice can not only be the foundation for building our emotional awareness and tolerance, but it's also a chance to practice taking a break. We may find ourselves thinking ahead when we're not actively doing something, and this practice gives us a chance to learn, how do I rein that back in? If I'm thinking about the future every time I have a spare moment, how do I bring that back? And lastly, one of the things we know is that, outpatient treatment isn't always enough support when we're struggling with our eating disorder. This means that for some of us, we're going to need to take time away from work and from school and our regular responsibilities to really commit to treatment and recovery. And this means a big break from things that usually make us feel productive. This type of break will likely bring up a lot of emotions that can be hard to tolerate, as we've talked about. And it's important that we have the support to talk about these emotions in treatment because they're trying to tell us something. So let's talk a little bit about what it is that can make it so hard for us to rest. As we discussed before, emotions are a major player in what can make it difficult to rest. And we have emotional reactions to any experience we have in life. There is an emotion, even just sitting here listening to me. Even if I was talking about something very mundane, you'd have an emotional reaction. If I was talking about something very exciting, you'd have an emotional reaction. It's just the intensity and the type of emotion that change for us based on the experience and the way we're interpreting it. We all also have our own unique experiences of emotions based off of prior experiences we've had or heard about. And this means that while I'm going to talk generally about emotional reactions to rest, I encourage you all to think about specifically for you what would be coming up based off of your experiences and beliefs. So the bullet points below, emotions. These are all below emotions are all aspects that can impact our emotional response to rest. The message we receive from others about what it means to rest will impact us. Do we work in an environment where taking time off is acceptable and encouraged, or is it somewhere that we are punished for taking that time away? When we ask to take a break from school or work to go play, as kids, what response did we receive? Are we surrounded by people who take pride in being busy and have made negative comments about others having downtime or not working as hard? If we've got negative responses, these could lead to feelings of guilt and worthlessness for us when we rest. We may even start to internalize and tell ourselves that we are lazy if we aren't being productive or doing something related to work. And then when the belief is internalized, it doesn't always matter what those around us are saying. Our internal dialogue will impact us just as much, if not more, than those comments outside and what people are saying out loud. And then the last thing that can make it difficult to rest is our environment. So there are environments that make it very difficult to rest due to others not respecting our boundaries, having unrealistic expectations of us, really being stuck in that hustle and grind culture, or other aspects of our lives. And if you notice we're in this environment where we're trying to increase our ability to rest and it's just not really allowing us, there's continual pushback on those boundaries, it might be time to think about finding a different environment that maybe allows that practice a little bit more. Okay, so noticing your own emotions around rest, and I'm checking the time and realizing we're going to go through this a little quicker. So I want to give you all a chance to notice your own emotions around resting. I want to invite everyone to take a moment of stillness to practice a little bit of mindfulness with. So what I'm going to ask everyone to do is, put phones on silent, things away. If there's stuff on your lap or things in front of you, put it to the side. And if you're not driving or walking somewhere, try to close your eyes. And if you're in a safe space and feel comfortable, try to close your eyes. And I want you just to bring awareness to how you're feeling in this moment. Notice what it feels like as you inhale and exhale. Remembering that your breath is always happening in the present. And that each breath brings in a new moment. And as you have that awareness of your breath, try to expand it to also notice what else you're feeling physically. How does it feel to be sitting or standing in your body at this moment? Notice areas of tension or relaxation. Notice what you're doing or wanting to do. Did you notice some soreness and so you're shifting in your seat like I am? You notice an itch and there's an urge to scratch it. And whatever behaviors or urges we have, we're going to let them be there. Simply working on noticing them. And notice also where your thoughts are. The present, the future, the past. Do you feel like they're moving quickly or slowly? And now I want you to think about what it would feel like to leave right at the end of your day today. Not stay later, but only work what the hours were you were supposed to work and leave with things unfinished. Try to notice how that changes the experience in your body. As you think about if it's 5 o'clock or 6 o'clock, what it would feel like to walk out. So I want you just to reflect on what you noticed during this experience. Any emotions that came up either while we were working on just being mindful and still, or when we thought about that idea of, maybe not finishing things we thought we would, having that boundary of leaving work at a specific time. Okay, so you're probably, hopefully, wondering now, okay, I can recognize hustle culture. I understand how it can negatively impact my eating disorder, but what next? Wonderful question. Reappraisals for hustle culture. So once we have awareness of when and how hustle and grind culture is impacting us, it's time to start adding in flexibility to the thoughts we're having. If you've gone through Renfrew's UT treatment, the word reappraisals is not going to be something new for you. But if you haven't, we use reappraisals as a way to add flexibility to our thoughts. And once we've thought something, we can't unthink it. We've had the experience of telling ourselves, don't think about it, don't think about it, don't think about it. All it does is make us think about it more. So instead of trying to get rid of thoughts we're already having, we're using reappraisals to just add in more thoughts. So they work best when they are personal to us and that there's something we can kind of get behind, we can kind of see the truth in. So while we're going over some general ones today, remember, think about what makes sense for you, your thoughts, your experiences in particular. It's also important to remember it's not going completely against, it's just giving a little bit more flexibility. The easy way to start to do that is notice when there's like extreme all or nothing language in them and switch it out. So want to and could over must or should. So the idea of like, I must finish this tonight. I could finish this tonight. I want to finish this tonight and I'm also tired. This adds in just a little bit of flexibility, but can have a big impact on the emotional experience we have around it. We can also work on recognizing process over product. So when you let yourself take a break, reflect on what you've learned during the process so far. Is there something that hasn't turned out the way you thought it was going to? Is there an idea somebody else shared that you've been able to incorporate that otherwise you might not have? Taking time to reflect on the process so far, one, allows better appreciation. It also allows more awareness of the process and gets us to stop focusing just on the product or the end goal and can allow more opportunities for learning. And lastly, we can work on creating more flexibility by testing out some of our beliefs. If we, have the thought like, I have to respond to this email right now or it won't get handled, try waiting. Try waiting just 5 more minutes than you would normally to respond and see if someone else maybe gets to it beforehand. See if the situation is able to resolve itself. Giving ourselves a chance to test out real world allows us to have more information that goes against our beliefs as opposed to just going in and then doing what we've always done, which reinforces the idea that that's what we must continue to do. So will resting lead to less success? You may be thinking this sounds well and good, but am I going to be less successful? It does not have to. As we've discussed, taking rest can actually increase productivity, quality, work, and allow us more times for things we value in life. It may mean we need to increase flexibility in our definition of success, but it does not mean it will diminish our success. And here's the other good news. Is hustle and grind culture hanging around? No, it is on its way out. So according to some surveys that were conducted post-pandemic, people are actually starting to let go of the hustle and grind mindset, and workers are choosing to prioritize their overall happiness in multiple areas of life as opposed to just focusing on work and success. This does not mean it's happening everywhere, but we are seeing the push is a little bit more towards work-life balance. So the other reason this is happening is we started talking more about the inequity of hustle and grind culture. Many were hustling because it was the only way to make ends meet. And the idea is that maybe we don't need to be working harder. Maybe we need to look at how much we're being compensated for the work that we're doing. People also began talking more about the inequity and the idea that we can all achieve the same thing if we just work hard enough. We kind of talked about that at the beginning. We know that the reality is some of us have inherent unearned privileges that don't extend to others. And if you're starting further ahead in the race, you're going to get to that finish line faster than somebody who's starting behind you. So working just as hard doesn't mean people will get to the same place. So it is on its way out, thankfully. So what are some ways to go against hustle and grind culture? Final reminder, process over product. It is about the experience. It is about the process. It is not about the end goal. Look at what you're learning and experiencing each step of the way. add some flexibility into your way of thinking, remembering there isn't just one way to do things. And lastly, create environments for yourself that respect your need to rest. Look at your work culture, look at your home culture in relationships, what you're putting out and promoting on social media, and try to have it be one that promotes rest. So this also is great if you're a supervisor, making sure you're modeling for your staff, taking rest and taking breaks and giving them to yourself, so that they see that, this is what's allowed. And now we will go to Q&A with not even any time left. You're on mute, Hannah.
Thank you so much, Erin, for this awesome presentation that you brought us through on this past hour. I know that our time is very limited, but for folks that maybe are able to hang on, I thought we could maybe just do one question, and I'm actually going to try and combine two questions together. Which is, how can I help break a cycle of hustle culture that might be happening in my own work or in my own family? This one person was asking, like they're getting this, but their employer might not really be getting this as well. And so how might you help tackle this?
Okay, great questions. I think the first thing is like boundaries and being very clear about those boundaries and staying with them. The thing with boundaries is, it's not like a fence line where I can set it and then I'm done. It's like it's like a I don't know what it's like actually. It's something where it's like I set that fence line and I keep having animals run through it and break it down. And that's what happens. It's something I've got to tend to. I've got to keep going back to it. I really need to be working on making sure I'm maintaining it, I'm keeping it up, and I'm continuing to reinforce it, because over time, people are going to test those boundaries. And I think when it gets to the point that it's like, I'm continually reinforcing these are my boundaries and this employer maybe isn't listening, that's the time when it might be time for an environmental change of like, I need to leave this area that I'm in, this environment that I'm in, because it's not supporting and it's going to lead to more burnout. That's a really big change to make, and a scary one. And sometimes that's the option that we have, because if someone is not respecting our boundaries continually, and we're continuing to address it each time they're not doing it, then we're kind of going to an empty well looking for water every time. We're not going to be able to continue to do that long term. We've got to at some point in time say, okay, the well's dry, I can't go back to it. So I think being very clear, talking with them about your expectations and their expectations, and what are the areas where they're not meeting up, and is there a middle ground? Can we meet together here? One of the things I always like to say is, in a relationship, if it's not good for one, it's not good for the other. Like, we've got to be having things that are, if not completely equitable, at least like somewhat more equitable for a relationship to work well, including a work relationship. So I think continuing to go back and set those boundaries would be really the first thing. And if with continued tending to the boundaries, it's still not being respected, that's when we maybe got to move.
Thank you, Erin. That's great advice. So as we have approached a little bit past the hour, this does conclude the presentation. Once again, thank you so much, Erin, for sharing your expertise and passion with us today. And on behalf of myself, Erin, and the Renfrew Center, thank you all so much for participating, and have a wonderful day. Take care.
Thank you.